We just start talking about how we met.
Oh man, how we met. Yeah. So I mean, if you want to get specific, I mean, you're the one with the dates. So I mean,
It was June 6th, 2017, right?
Okay. I remember, yeah.
Yeah, you remember. We were chaperoning a field trip.
Yeah. No, what was crazy was that just getting to that field trip. There's things that I'll never forget about that. But I remember just getting there early, dropping off, my daughter, and just sitting in the car and just there swiping on Instagram, and all of a sudden I see this red Honda Civic just come like bombing in, just comes bombing in, parking like the reverse direction.
I still park the reverse direction too.
Yeah, comes parking in the reverse direction, and I'm like, what is going on? This lady's gonna smash into me, and sure as hell, like she gets out, and it was just kind of like how it is in the movies, right? Of like you kind of just see like all the butterflies and stuff like that, like little angels talking and stuff. And I remember just saying to myself, I'm like, just have a backpack, because then I knew you were gonna be on the field trip. And then you open up your back door and just grab the backpack, and you're like, we're late. And I thought that was the best thing. I remember just saying to myself, I'm like, yeah, it's gonna be a good day.
Yeah, I didn't see you until you got on the bus with Kiara. And I was sitting in the back with Carly, my daughter, our daughter now.
Yeah.
And I said, do you know who that is? Is that a teacher? She's like, no. I'm like, whose dad is it? And then I was texting my friends, there's a hot dad on the bus. Like, I'll never forget texting my friends from work, because PT had covered for me that day, because at the time my schedule was Monday, Tuesday, Friday, Saturday, and that was a Tuesday.
Yeah, no, it was just, and I remember that after I saw you leave, and you just kind of just took off, and it's funny because I always used to walk in the reverse direction of that school, so I'm like, all right, let me go walk in this way. And then so I remember when I went walking in, I was looking for you, I'll never forget, and we're inside the lobby, and I'm looking around, I'm like, oh damn, I'm like, maybe, I don't know, you went out through a back door, maybe you weren't gonna go, maybe you just walk your daughter to school, things like that. And I'm like, that's it. Then sure as hell decided getting on the bus. It's funny that you said that, because I saw you get on first, and I was like, we're on the same bus. And I remember just like getting up there, walking up those stairs, and seeing you. I was trying to play it cool as a cucumber. I was walking in, I was like almost kind of had my little strut going down like the bus walkway.
Yeah.
And we sat down. I was playing it cool the whole entire time, and I remember like same thing. Like Kiara hadn't seen who you were yet, so like we didn't know, she didn't know anything yet. So I remember like just enjoying the moment and getting into it, but like kind of like brainstorming in my head. I'm like, how am I gonna talk to her? How am I gonna kind of get it? Which is weird for me, because I was very used to it always being the other way. It was like it was very.
Well, I did end up speaking to you first.
Yeah, you did.
When we got off the bus, because that was the coldest day in Massachusetts June history. It was 45 degrees or something, and pouring rain.
It was pouring. It was like
rain.
that raw. It was just that raw cold day. I'll never forget that too. And I remember just like seeing you just. I think that you got, like, I obviously got up there, you got off, and then it was just trying to like navigate, like, because obviously now we're in groups.
Yeah,
so
we have the kids.
I'm kind of trying to corral like my group. I'm like, oh, okay, let's kind of stay over here. Like, it's like, but then I remember just us walking and everything else like that, and it was in Charlestown or by the Naval Yard, and we were trying to make our way towards towards the monument.
Yeah.
And we stopped in at that, was it like a souvenir store? What was it? Like
some type of like museum.
It was a museum, right? And then you came in and I think I commented on your umbrella originally because it looked like brass knuckles, and I'm like, damn, you ready for a fight? Like
that umbrella that I bought at 7-Eleven that morning. That's why we were late, because I didn't have an umbrella and we had to stop.
We still have that umbrella. Like it has sentimental value. That's umbrella that's still in the house. So,
yep. And I dropped it. Remember in the museum, and I said, "Oh shit." And then I
like,
looked
sorry.
at you and I'm like, I'm sorry.
And I was like, you sorry about like hitting me with it? Or you sorry about swearing in front of all these children?
Yeah. That's right.
And then I remember that it was just like so funny. And then that was kind of just like the beginning of it. It was kind of like that spark that I remember that. And it was just weird because like I knew at that point too that like obviously that you had those same feelings that I kind of did of kind of like, oh, like I kind of need to know who this person is. And we kind of stayed gravitating to one another. And so the funniest part was that, as you already know I'm getting at, is that so we get to the monument, which if anybody is not from Boston, the monument, if you've ever been there, it's the Bunker Hill Monument. How many steps was it?
We'll have to look it up, but it's like 217 or 236 or something. Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot of steps.
You're thinking like it's steps, and you're thinking like, oh, I can do that, like no problem. No, it's awful. It's an awful time. So here I am thinking I want to be cool and things like that. I have a backpack with like all of our lunch, our snacks, our water bottles, everything. I'm in Tim boots and the whole entire time. And like, oh, who has a volunteer to set the pace? And here I am. I'm like, me, because I'm like trying to like, it's like being at the gym and like throwing an extra plate on. I'm like, I'll do it. And I'm setting the pace, and I'm thinking like, because I was working, I was in good shape. Well, I thought I was. And then I'll never forget that we get up there. Now we're doing these steps, and these steps are probably like, I don't know, like that. Then they're made for little feet.
Yeah.
We start doing it. I probably get to right around like, and it's just a spiral staircase like this. I probably get to about like 70, 80 steps, and like I thought my kneecaps were gonna fly off.
It's brutal. It's brutal.
And it was good pace, but then I remember like just huffing and puffing at that top, and I'm like, oh my god, like I need to get my shit together.
Yeah, well, you did, because I was like the third group to go up, and I was, hands on my knees at the top, sucking in air because I was so out of breath. And I was in good shape because I had been like kickboxing. I was training for a half marathon, so I was running like 6-7 miles a day at the time. Yeah. And I was sucking air, and there you are with your backpack on, sitting there. And I'm like, wow, you look really relaxed for having just climbed these stairs. Well, so now in my head, I'm like, all right, you had told me that you had to take the day off to chaperone. So I'm like, he has a job. He's obviously a dedicated dad because he's chaperoning with his daughter right now. And he's in good shape because he's all cool, calm, and collected at the top of these 200 and something stairs.
Not even a sweat.
I was sore for like days afterwards.
I know. I seriously thought, I was like going down them stairs. I'm like, oh my god, my knees are gonna give out, and I'm gonna just go around this. This would be like a Family Guy episode, just like kind of going down this. But whatever, like we made it down. It was lunchtime, and I remember I saw you dip out, get some air because there was so many kids, and it was, the humidity was in there and stuff like that. So I remember like I saw you walk out, and I remember like just grabbing Kiara. I'm like, oh, let's go outside. It's too stuffy in here and things like that. And I saw you eating strawberries. It was nice. So I was just like, I was just kind of like, oh yeah, I like where this is going. But yeah, and it was just kind of. But what was odd is like we kind of stayed around each other. We say like a few different words to one another, and then obviously more groups came out, and then we kind of had to like go with all the kids had to take photos and things like that. We had to kind of go back to our group, so that was kind of just it. Then we get back on the bus. We kind of have more words about it, like kind of like the quote, like the regular like. Oh, it sure beats being at work, huh? Like, like the banter, like going back and forth.
Well, we had the kids with us. Like, it's not like we could get so like deep into like.
Right, and then I was still trying to figure out too, like, because like I could never get like a good sight of like your hands. So I'm like, is she married? I'm trying to figure this out. Like.
Oh, that's right, because you thought that. 'Cause I was texting one of my uncles, actually, and I was smiling at my phone, and you thought I might have been, yeah.
That was like probably like my big thing, because like I was just kind of like, oh, she's really smiling at her phone. I'm like, oh, she probably has a boyfriend, or she's married or something like that. I was just like, oh, well, we'll see what happens. And then, but then it was just kind of like, as the day kind of progressed, I'm just kind of like, like, I don't think she has either one of those. If she's not, then.
Yeah, she shouldn't be flirting with me like this.
But then, like, I remember, like, we finally get back to school, and obviously they were letting us dismiss our kids. So I remember I went in there, and, you know, I started signing my name down there, and you were kind of like right behind me. So I kind of have, you know, just talking to some of my friends that I grew up with that actually worked at the school, and you know, I'll never forget that. You know, I'll at the peripheral, at the side of my eye, like I kind of see you do like one of these, like you look down, and you're like.
Well, I was really looking because I wanted to know what your name was, because at no point had we exchanged names. That was when I first learned how terrible your signature, which I can now forge to perfection, is. But
I'm a doctor.
Yeah.
I'm a doctor.
But you had at least printed Kiara's name, so I knew that your last name was Figueroa. So I had that much information to go on. I start getting real stalkerish at this point, from this point of the story forward.
This is the part that kind of scared me a little bit. What ended up happening next, but so like in my mind, when I saw you kind of do like that, you know, a little squint and go in for a closer look, I was like, in my mind, I'm like, yeah, like
got her.
And at that point, so then I at this point now I'm crafting my plan. I'm like, you know what? Let me go out that same way. I'm gonna walk a little bit slower, kind of see. We parked next to each other, so I kind of wanted to be around you when you got back. So I kind of remembered that. And you came around the corner, and, you know, kind of, it was, this is like where like the awkward part of me came in, because like, here, like, you are, and here I am, and I'm, like, yelling at you, like, being like, oh, we had fun today, like, all this different stuff like that.
You were walking towards me with your outstretched hand from, like, a mile away.
Yeah, like, I'm just, like, it's like when you hold the door open for somebody, and, like,
but they're like, really far.
They're really far away. Now they're, like, bringing it to a trot. Like, that's how it was. I'm just like, hey, how you doing? Like, let me run closer to you with my hand.
I had to start jogging.
Yeah, like, I'm
like, oh, I'm Megan.
Yeah, I'm like, I get back in the car like such a nerd. I'm like so mad at myself. But then like that was like the funniest thing. But then I was like, Megan. I'm like, but then obviously this is like where it got super hard, because obviously, you know, I looked you up too. Like, and like so but the funniest thing is like now I'm like grilling Kiara in the car.
Yeah.
Going at her. I'm like, hey, what's your friend's name? Like, did you know that girl? She's like, oh, that's Carly. What's her name? I don't know. How don't you know your friend's last name? And I was there, and she was like, well, she's not really like my friend. Like we're in class. Like, she's in the other class. Like we know of each other and stuff like that. And I'm like, but you don't know her name?
Keep in mind, the kids were like 8 and 9.
Yeah. So. Yeah, I know. But like here I am thinking like,
time,
it's like, you should know this stuff. Like, unrealistic expectations of your kids, right?
Yeah. But then at that point, I had your first and last name from looking at the book, and then you finally introducing yourself to me.
Right.
So I knew you were Kyle Figueroa. So at my first red light, I was Googling you. And I was like, all right. Went to Malden High, graduated in 04, we're the same age. He's an electrician, okay.
Jesus.
But then I tried to find you on Facebook, and you did not have a Facebook.
Like, who the hell doesn't have a Facebook?
Yeah, I'm like, who doesn't have a Facebook? And then I found you on Instagram.
Yes.
You were private. And so I was texting my friends saying, like, oh, I found the hot dad on Instagram, but I don't know, like, is it weird if I add him? And everyone was like, no, just do it. Like, you said you never saw him before. What's the worst thing that can happen? Like, he thinks you're crazy and he doesn't accept it. You never see him again.
Yeah.
So I did. I added you.
Yeah, and then I remember, like, I think, so that's what ended up happening. I remember that I ended up going to an escape room with the kids afterwards. We picked up, we got Mia.
Yeah.
And we went to an escape room afterwards, and they were having fun. But I remember I was trying to look you up, but I had no idea what your name was. So I'm like Googling like Megan, Malden, like Megan, like I'm just like area, like I'm just trying to like see like what I can find, and it's like nothing's popping up. But obviously, but also I didn't know either. Like I'm spelling it Megan. There's 15 different ways you can spell the name, and of course the one way that I don't know how to spell it is the way how you spell yours.
Yeah.
Because you have 2 N's.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, who does that? But it was just like that was like I would have never found it. But then I remember that, we went in and stuff like that. I'm like, I was already devising like the next plan. Like I was like plan B. I was gonna write I was gonna bring it old school. Like write you a note and like fold it into like the square and be like, hand this to Carly and tell her to give it to her mom. Like what the hell? I'm thinking to myself like, buddy, like you're out of your mind right now. But that's how interested I was. But then I remember I came out and I looked at my phone and see like if I notifications like Megan O. I'm like, oh, Megan O. I'm like, oh my god, nice. Accept.
I just wanted on the record that you did message me first, at least. You did.
I mean, listen. If we were to compare,
who did more? I did the most.
Who did more? You did the most. Your background checked me. I mean, and then on top of that, you're looking hard. But no. But no, honestly, I did. And you're like, oh, I thought I was gonna it's like I'm just kind of like you didn't think I was weird. I'm like, no, I didn't say that. I was like, I definitely do think you're weird. I definitely think you're weird. I'm like, it's all right though. I'm fucked up too. So it's, but that's kind of what it was. But I think what's the craziest part about that story that I think a lot of people don't realize, and it's just like you hear like how great it was, but like what was crazy was that how, for me, I went into that day not thinking that was ever going to happen. Right. I was in such a point in my life where I was done, reserved myself to the point of you know what, I have my kids, I have my house, I have I had a good thing going with my life at that point. I was comfortable that I was just kind of I think I'm all done dating, right? And then it was just when you least expect it, right? And it was just seeing you, and I'm just like, wow, I've never had that feeling. I've never had that feeling of seeing somebody and being I don't know what it is, but she needs to be in my life. And it was just, that was probably the biggest thing for me where I just knew. And it's weird that people say that, when people would be like, oh, I knew she was the one for me. I knew she was gonna be my wife, and I knew she would be. But that day taught me that. It was just literally because when I saw you, I'm just kind of wow, this is a big thing. And obviously,
yeah, I mean, I was pretty much in the same place. At that point, I mean, I had been divorced for years. Even by then, I think 6 years or something at that point. So it was a long time, and I had dated a little bit. But
how could you?
Yeah.
How could you date someone before me? Yeah.
But literally 2 days before we met, I was at one of my cousin's graduation parties talking to my other cousins and my aunts, and you guys will hear throughout this podcast a lot about my family because they're a big part of our story too. But
that's a part.
Yeah. But and they were asking me if I was dating anyone or whatever, and I was saying the same thing that you just said. I was like, no, I don't know, I'm in a good place in my life. I just don't want to complicate it with anyone. And funnily enough, I would
say, want to complicate
yeah, I know. I would say too, oh, I don't want to date anyone that has kids. And my mom would be like, Megan, you have a kid. You can't say that. That's ridiculous. And I was saying, I'm happy with Carly. I was renting the apartment down the stairs from my parents. I was going out with my work friends and just having a good time in my life. And I said I was going to wait until Carly went to college to start dating again. I said me and Carly were going to be the Gilmore Girls. It was going to be me and her.
Okay.
And that was it. I had just bought a Honda Civic, which became obsolete to us so quickly.
Yeah.
But it was the first car I ever bought, like, without a co-signer, you know, like, my parents weren't on it, like, nobody was on it, it was just me. I was so proud of myself. And I was not gonna date, and then I said those words out loud, and then 2 days later, I saw you, and I was like, I want you. And that never happens to me. I would always hear those stories and be like, yeah, okay, who just meets someone standing in line at Dunkin' Donuts? Like, that's not like a real thing, you know?
I think that was probably even the craziest part, because like what was rocking? Like, you had Bumble, you had Tinder, you had like these apps.
Yeah, all those apps, Hinge, like whatever.
Yeah, you had all like that stuff. I don't know if it was that. Was it Hinge up then?
I don't know. I just know it's an app now.
Yeah. I think it was like Tinder and Bumble and stuff like that. And like to think of like, Jesus Christ, people still meet like this. And it was, but I think that's what made it so great. It's like we met on a field trip, like of all places. Like it was just kind of the most craziest of things, right? But it was definitely something that was so unexpected and just turned out to be like the biggest blessing of my life. Like it's like, again, I think it was, you know, at that point, then we set up like our first date, and
good old Monument. We went back to Charlestown.
We brought it back to Charlestown. Charlestown's a very important place to us for that reason. And you know, I just wrapped up wiring Monument. And so I'm just kind of like thinking,
that's why you wanted to bring me.
Oh my God,
show me.
it was a big swing. Like I was just kind of like, oh yeah, hey, well, oddly enough, we're here. Like just look up around. Like hey, like you know, I did this. Like a trade dad. Like hey, you see that house? I did that house.
Yeah.
But you know, exactly. I just remember going into it, and I remember we sat down, and Jesus, like the conversation, like it was just. Never had a conversation like that. It was just probably like one of the greatest things about it. It was just us just talking and just nonstop, to the point that like waitresses and waiters and all that stuff like coming up to us, and we're just like, oh, sorry, I didn't even look at the fucking menu. It's just like, and kind of coming back at it. But then it was just weird because like we had like that's such a great time here.
Here we go.
Yeah, know exactly what's coming.
I know where you're going.
Yeah, coming out, and you know, we walk out. I'm thinking we're gonna have a nice walk back. I'm walking back to her car. She's just like booking it, like she's just moving, and I'm like, okay, like I guess this is not a little chew and screw type thing. I was like, what's going on? Like, and she is like to the point where I'm like almost like kind of like in a trot. Like I'm kind of like, all right, like I actually got to pick up my feet. Like this is like.
I was just a fast walker. Also, at the time, I was like super independent. I was like, you know, I really liked you, but I was just like, all right, like, you know, used to being by myself, used to doing things at my own pace, you know. Yeah. I wasn't running away from you, clearly.
Yeah, not used to being on dates.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what it was. Yeah,
exactly.
Not used to just being on dates. Like, yeah, hey, what's going on? I'm just like, okay, I'll meet you at the car.
Yeah, I know. But you walked me to my car. We hugged.
Yeah, but even that was like, it was like weird. Like I felt like, I remember it was kind of like do I go in for the kiss? Like, do I not? It was just kind of like that weird thing. And then, but then exactly, like, then obviously we went for the second date. But I remember leading up to the second date, we had a conversation, and it was, basically, I'm like, listen, before we go any further, I'm like, I have to ask you a question. Like, do you like seafood? You're like, I love seafood. Yeah. And I'm like, all right, we can continue. Yeah. And that was like, because that was like a big thing. I was like, I ain't dealing with no picky person.
No.
But
our second date though, we went to River Bar in Assembly. Remember?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that date, we didn't even order food.
I don't think we did.
We didn't.
I don't think at all. Like,
because we were so like caught up in talking to each other, and
the conversation was like, that was probably like my biggest thing, is that like the conversations that we had, it was just never a breaking conversation. It was just rolling. It was just topics. It didn't matter. It was just, we found something to talk about and everything. And that was probably like one of the most beautiful parts about it. And exactly, it's like, it was like another time of like people just showing up and just basically saying like, you know,
hey, you guys gonna get food?
Yeah, you gonna get food? We're like, yeah, I'll take another drink though.
Yeah, we ordered plenty of drinks. That's what I was gonna say. I know we had over $100 bill and we didn't order food. So.
Yeah. And
that was like back in our drinking days.
Somewhat pickled.
Yeah.
But it was, but yeah, no, exactly. It was just like kind of one of those things, and but I remember that, like, there was like an ice break moment there, in the sense of that, I'll never forget that. Like, I reached out and I grabbed your hands, and just to hold them.
And I was like, "What are you doing?"
Literally, I was like, I grabbed your hand. You were like,
I was such an ice queen back then.
You were so icy.
Yeah,
it was so bad, to the sense that, like, I'm just like, but it was something that I kind of felt like inside. So that's why it's like when I reached out and I like just grabbed your hands, like I felt you kind of go like this, like it was like that jolt of like, what are you doing? But then you were kind of like it was like melting. It was just like you just kind of like settled into it.
Yeah,
like,
I relaxed into it.
Right, and it was just kind of like, that was like the cool things. But I remember it kind of, in me and like my hyper, like, overstimulated, like, vigilant mind of like trauma responses and everything else like that. Like, that I'm thinking that, like, it's, I'm like, oh, like, she's probably been through something, like, and those are things and that I would always tune into. And that was like another crazy thing, is that, like, and how that was probably the craziest thing about it, was that I just remember, you just, well, not so much as that, I just remember just being so in tune to you. Yeah, even then, like, that was just like the craziest part about it, was that, like, it was just kind of like feeling like, and which is odd, because like I would never consider myself an empath, and like, and it was like one of those things of like in understanding what those person's feelings are, but then also feeling it like myself, like I was always quite the opposite, and so, which I didn't know what those words meant until I met you.
Yeah, but I remember, like, even when we were walking, like, through assembly after, and you were holding my hand and you were like, just slow down, like, just slow down.
Yeah,
I was just so independent at that time, and I was really like closed off, thinking like, I don't need anybody. Like that type of thing, but I really liked you, so it was very, like,
it was definitely
nerve-wracking for me.
It's funny because, like, now that you do, because it's I remember certain things about that walk, and I don't, but you're right, because now that you mentioned it, I remember saying, like, grabbing your hand, I'm like, slow down, like, what's going on, like, and stuff like that, and you're like, I'm just a fast walker. We used to start joking about it. I think I pulled a move on you. I gave you a little spin. And that's when I laid the first kiss on you.
Yep, so, outside the Nike store at Assembly.
Oh, late. Oh yeah. Made your knees buckle.
That was it for me. That was it for me.
Yeah. Remember what you said?
Yeah, but I don't know if my parents are gonna listen to this podcast, so.
That's gonna be the subscriber episode.
Yeah, exactly.
And then it's like subscribe to our next page. But yeah, I think that's a funny moment in all of itself. But it's
I think at that point we knew, like, we really, really liked each other, and so I think that was why you texted me before our third date, and you were like, I'm just gonna tell you everything and be completely honest with you, and like, I just need you to, like,
don't run.
Exactly. Don't run. Try not to be scared.
Because, like, I'll never forget that. I remember, like, I was telling my brother about you and stuff like that, and he was just so, he's like, and basically this leads up to what our third date was, and me kind of trying to tell you that, because when I was telling him about how excited I was about you, and he was just kind of like, all right, dude, like, like, who you shitting? Like, he's just like, you're just gonna cheat on her like you've done everyone else. And I was like, no, like, and I remember it kind of like made me feel sideways about it. I'm like, but then I understood where it was coming from, right? I understood where it was coming from, and at that point I'm like, that's how he saw me, and then that's why it kind of compelled me. I'm like, you know what, like, I think, like, and which is something, like, no one ever freaking leads like that way, right? Like,
I was like, what the hell is he gonna tell me?
Like, like, are you trying to keep me? You gotta push me away. And I remember, like, exactly, like, we went out on our third date, and I'm like,
4 wins, baby.
4 wins, that's right.
Yep.
Lakeland and Pasaki.
Yep.
But pond. But I'll never forget that we were just sitting there, and absolutely airing myself out.
Oh my God, you dumped out everything.
I dumped out everything. I was like, listen, I'm a mess in the sense of that, I've never been faithful to anybody. This is what it was. I like to have fun. I just, but I basically told you everything I hated about myself. Right?
Yeah, and you told me a lot just about like what was going on with like the kid's mother and stuff like that.
Right. And
because that was when you told me that you guys had like that she had moved out of the house 10 days before you and I met.
Yeah, like facts.
So
like it was like that was all the more reasons and like all the more
you
reasons.
You said Memorial Day and I said, "Oh, Memorial Day
last year,
2016." Yeah. And you were like, "No, like this Memorial Day." And I was like, "Oh fuck." Okay.
Yeah.
I'm like, so 10 days before we met. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and it was just like, but I remember I wanted to tell you that because I didn't want you to make it feel like it was a rebound or anything else like that. Because I was over the moon with you. About you, and it was just kind of like, oh crap, and I'm like, but you're the first person I ever want to be truthful with. Like that was probably like the hardest thing for me. It was just kind of like, man, I'm like, but a lot of that came from, like you said, it was like that moment of like, it's like my ex moved out of the house, and I'll never forget that. Something that I talk about a lot, that one day I wake up, like I just don't sleep, and it's 1 o'clock in the morning, and there's just moonlight coming in through from my front window, and I'm like on like my hands and my knees, like crying, like sobbing, like praying to God, like is this life? Like, is this why I'm like, is this all that this is about? Is this everything? Like you didn't give me life just for me to go through this. Like this cannot be what life is. Like this wake up, put on your shoes, go to work, have an okay job, have this mediocre relationship, or just deal with the same broads and the same bullshit and the same things, just like this cycle of just like the same headaches and problems all the time. I'm like, this cannot be it. If this is it, if this is all that's here, then just take it now, because I don't want it. And I remember just being so upset about it. And my alarm clock goes off to go to work, and the tears stop, and I see my boots and strap on my boots, like wipe my face, like put on a smile, and I just go to work. And but that was the day that the switch flipped for me. Like it was just kind of like, all right, man, like you've been doing left your whole life, let's try some right. And I never realized that. It's just kind of like, all right, you've been doing it one way this whole entire life. It hasn't been working, so do something different.
Yeah.
Dummy. Like it was just like that. And that's who you were. Like that was like that moment. I was like that moment where I was just kind of like, you know what, like I'm just gonna just tell her like what my life was, and still was at that point, because I didn't know. I knew I wanted different. I just didn't know what different was. Like I didn't know how to get there. And then, I remember just telling you, and then exactly like I was going through it with like my ex, like and things like that. Like I said, we had 2 kids, and that kept me there for a long time. And it's because in meeting you, and then this is kind of like leading up to like the next point of like meeting like your family and after that date, right? It was Mandy's wedding engagement party.
Yeah.
And then
in my grandparents' yard. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember like when you brought me in there. I remember like everyone. It was like a record scratch. It was like like everyone just kind of like looking at me.
Really excited. Everyone was waiting for that one. Really excited to see who Megan was bringing.
But for a second, I thought you were Mexican, because you see all these people in the backyard. I'm just like, dude, there's a lot of people here. Like it was like the funniest thing.
Just for background, my mom's one of 9, and I'm the oldest of like 35 cousins, and just so many friends and it's just such a big group. And
but that was the thing. I remember like you said, you're like, oh, I have a big family. Like I'm like, no, like this is a fucking community. Like this is not. I'm like, this is more than that. Like I'll never forget that. And then like just walking in, I remember like Tess. I'll never forget Tess coming in. She's like, oh, his face is so cute. Like,
he's so cute.
Just goes like that. I'm like, oh, hey, I like you. Like,
I was like, I know he is.
Yeah. And then like,
but then everyone, like, as they were leaving, were coming up to me and being like, I love him for you. Like, he's perfect for you.
But that was the craziest thing was that like it was the first time I was ever there. But it was like a moment where I felt like this is where I deserve to be. Like, like I need to be here. And then, you know, meeting everybody and stuff like that. I'm like, listen, I'm horrible with names. And then they're like, no, listen, there's a lot of us. Like, we do not blame you if you do not. We're not gonna get offended. Like, everyone was so nice because they were like, I'm like, that was another thing too. Like, everyone was so nice. I'm so used to like hard people, like people that did like you like, oh hey, how you doing? Hey. You know, and it was just people like everyone's huggers, everyone's huggers and stuff like that. And I'm like, wow, this is so awesome. And then
I think that's you always say that's when you decided that we were gonna get married. Yeah.
For me, that was like the moment I was just like, I made that decision in my head. I'm like, this is everything I want for me, this is everything I want for my kids. And that was like one thing that I remember saying before, that you know, no one ever met my daughters. Like that was one thing I promised them, like, because me and my ex, like, we broke up so many times and got back together and this, that, and the other thing, and we dated people in between. And you know, one thing I always promised my kids, I'm like, you're never gonna meet somebody that's in my life. The only person you're gonna meet is somebody I'm gonna marry. Like I'm not gonna do that to you and stuff like that. And that was, you know, one of the big things. And that was like that moment where I'm like, this is that person. Like this is the person that they're gonna make their life better. Like and that was probably like the biggest thing. And it was like in meeting like your family, that was like the biggest blessing. But like most importantly was grandpa. Like grandpa was like my saving grace. Like to see him and just to see this man, right? Like you just see like this a stranger, but you see this man just kind of just stand up, and to see a party just erupt. Yeah. And then just to see, you know, these people get around him, right? And like this guy is like you would think that like this is how it is in my head. Like I'm giving you like my play-by-play. Like I'm literally watching this guy stands up, you know, all-time rock and roll comes on, and he's doing his shimmy, he's doing his thing, and he lets out a big old yell, and like everyone get behind him, and then like it was like as if like the time, like the hands of time were just getting turned back, like just a life that he was being given. Yeah. In that moment, that's how I honestly felt. Like I'm like this is how this guy has the strength that he does, and he has the power that he does. It's like his family just fuels him. Like it was like the most beautiful thing in the world, and I'll just never forget it. And I'm like, I remember like I like ran home to like my brother, and like I was like Willy Wonka with a chocolate ticket, and I'm like, here I am, I got the ticket of life. I'm like, like, you know, wrote it back to him, and I'm like, Charlie, I was like, this is probably one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen in my entire life. Yeah. And then to him, he's like, well, what? Like, what's the big deal? Like, but then, you know, we got together, stuff like that, and then you invited us to the Christmas show. Yeah. Yeah. That was after we were married, though. Was that after? Yeah, that was the year we got married. But that was after? Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah. Because what? Yeah. Because that Christmas of like that first year that we were together, we were broken up. So that's part of our story that everyone will hear too. Our multiple breakups. Yes. In which, you know, yeah.
Because we broke up, I think, probably twice. So we met in June of 2017.
Okay.
We got married in November of 2018. So, like, not even a year and a half later. But we had broken up, like, probably 2 or 3 times.
I would say like 3. I think it was like 2 or 3 times.
In between then. So it wasn't until, like, May of 2018 and that was when we had that dinner at the Blue Box, and we were like, all right, like, let's just stop. Like, this is what we both want. We love each other. Like, let's stop fucking around. And then at that point, we were fully together from that point on.
It was just weird because, like, now that you bring that up, because I just remember that, you know, it was kind of like those bad habits, right? It was just like the reasons why our relationships failed before, and it was just kind of like, you know, for me, it was because, like, I was living my life the way how I always lived it and stuff like that. I remember, like, you would have, like, your reactions.
Yeah.
And your reactions, the way how you always handled everything. Yep. And then, like, I hear what you're thinking, I'm like, you have no idea who you're messing with. Like, I was just like, I'm used to crazy. Yeah. I was like,
you're just a little crazy.
I'm like, you're just a little crazy. I was just like that. This is manageable crazy. I'm used to, like, I'm gonna kill somebody crazy. Like, and it was like this. And I remember, but it was just.
It was a lot, though. It was like your life was so different than what my life was, right? And even like, and obviously this is something else we'll talk about a lot, but even just how we both grew up. So what was normal to you was not at all normal to me.
Facts.
Right? And so it was like, you would be like, this isn't even a big deal. Like, if you think this is a big deal, like, you should have seen what used to happen. And I'm like, but it's a big deal to me because this isn't something that has ever happened in my life
before. That was probably, like, the biggest, like, learning curve that I had with you and just in general, is the fact of that, you know, just because I felt it wasn't, didn't mean that it's not crazy to you. And I think it was, like, understanding that, and that's the reasons why we broke up. It was that, like, all those times, is that because we would have those not discrepancies, but basically it's like we'd have those disconnections of, like, well, my reality is right, my reality is right, and then not understanding, like, there's problems in both realities, or sometimes, like, yeah, buddy, like, your reality is screwed up. This is the way how it should probably really be, like. And I think that was probably, like, what I learned, and, like, we gained that perspective, right? That was that perspective that I learned with you, and, like, and especially, like, your family, like, that was perspective. Like, it was, like, seeing your family, seeing the way how everyone was with one another. You know, it was in those moments where I learned, like, this is love. This is what love is. This is what family is. This is what being a real father is like.
Yeah.
This is what legacy is. Like, that's what I learned by meeting you and being with your family, and, you know, being around grandpa and stuff like that. It was all those things that, you know, and it's, the crazy part is that probably no one even knows that, like, and how much it changed my life.
Like, how deep it actually is.
How deep it was.
Yeah.
It was just because it's just like, I mean,
it's normal to us, right?
It's normal, right? It's every day. And versus somebody that never had that. And then so it's just like, you know, and obviously I remember, like, same thing, like, when my kids were around you and you would cook us, like, home cooked meals, and yeah, I'll never forget that the first time you made us, like, mac and cheese and from scratch. And I'm like, oh man, what's this, like, Velveeta? Like, well, you get that package in there, you put 2 packages in there? You're like, no, like, I like made my own cheese sauce.
The best was when I said, oh, I'm gonna make you guys pancakes, and Mia was like, oh, I don't think we have any pancake mix, and I'm like, no, that's okay, like, I'll just make it from scratch. And she's like, you can do that?
It was like so new to us. Like,
right, that's what I'm saying. Like, those breakups that we had were just, like, trying to come to terms with those differences, I think.
I think they were necessary. It was things of you know, in all honesty, I mean, you were the one that broke up with me.
You love to say that.
Yeah, I do. I do never to go away from you, but you always broke up with me.
We never left each other alone even during the breakup.
No, but you know what it was? It was that it was like those moments where like I needed to learn, that it wasn't okay.
Yeah, I think that was a year. That June to May, so almost a year. Like that first year of us meeting and being together and breaking up and stuff. I think that was such a year of like learning and like stretching for both of us.
Right.
You know.
Right. I think a lot of it had to do like it with like I know like for me, you know, in the beginning like when we started like our relationship and things like that, and like when you kind of would assert yourself as far as like, you know, this is not okay, like I'm not okay with this, like, you know, and I remember I used to just like bulldoze over these things. I used to like, you know, laugh at you. I used to be like lady, like pump your brakes, like I don't know, like, and it was just kind of like, and you know, used to be like, it's like, I remember I used to say to you, I'm like, you were off the rails. I used to tell you were off the rails all the time.
I was off the rails because I knew that what I was saying had validity to it.
Yeah.
And you would laugh. And it would make me crazy.
Right. And then,
but I can fully admit the texts and the things I was saying it was off the rails.
Sometimes,
it was something I needed to learn too, like that. Because in any previous relationship I've had, or relationships with anyone, like that was just how I responded to someone. I was just quick to anger, quick to you know, like how Selena is, like just that switch just flips and it's like, well, now fuck you.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. You hurt me. I'm gonna get the last word.
I'm gonna get the last word.
I think that's what it was. 'Cause I remember like we had the conversations about that and like the way, and like I offered you my perspective, right?
Yeah.
Of like, listen, like I'm not gonna argue with you, right? I'm not gonna argue with you. You matter more to me than having the last word.
Right.
Right? And that was something that when I said that to you, but then when we kind of figured it out, like, and I wouldn't engage you, like when you were upset in that sense, that I'm just kind of like, you know, when you're ready to talk, like we'll talk.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like I respect you and I love you more than, I'm like, this doesn't matter to me. Being right does not matter to me. Like this does not matter to me. What matters to me is you and us being happy.
Yeah.
And I think that was always kind of like that moment of like where we could like we diffuse the situation, and it got us to the point where we are now of like the sense of that people think we're full of shit whenever we say this, but we're like, we don't argue.
Yeah, we disagree. Like, not saying we always agree on things, but when we do, like, it's actually a conversation, which is just hilarious if you think about like how it started.
Oh yeah, I mean it was to the point of like me
shit that we would say to each other.
I'm like laughing in your face, and I'm like you're off the rails, lady.
Yeah.
Like we can like go laugh over there. Like it was just the worst thing. But you know, it was just weird because like it was like people always call it the honeymoon phase, stuff like that. I'm like I don't know if it was that much of a honeymoon in the beginning. It was just kind of like let's get all of our shit out of the way in the beginning. And it was
I think it took us till like year 2 of marriage to be in the honeymoon phase.
Yeah, exactly that. Like it was one of those things, and then like I remember like you had mentioned, like we kind of had that conversation. I'll never forget that we went to the Blue Ox. That was a night. It was a Thursday.
It was a Thursday.
We only saw each other once a week.
Yeah, because at the time Carly would go to her dad and stepmom's on Thursday nights. Right. And then you would get the girls for the weekend.
Right.
That was
on
the custody
Friday,
schedules.
Yeah.
So we only saw each other on Thursdays.
Because at that point
our kids hadn't met.
We were trying to figure out our own shit before we kind of
introduced the kids.
Introduced their lives.
Well, they knew each other.
They knew of each other.
Merging the families.
Right, merging everything, and I'll never forget that. And I remember like going there. I remember it was like because like we were so broken up. It was not officially back, but we were still kind of like doing our thing. And I remember that we went back and we had that conversation where I was just kind of like, hey, like, I just want you to know, like, this is not like that we're just like
fucking
hooking
around.
up. Yeah, like we're just hooking up and like, that's it. Like, I just want, and like, I remember like you got my hand and he's like, oh, thank you. Like, it was like, And I'm like, right.
We needed that conversation.
We need to have that conversation.
Yeah,
it was just one of those things
did.
in which we ended up having like, it was a great conversation. We had like a freaking like a
$400 night.
We had a $400 night between cocktails and
that was
food.
ridiculous.
Yeah, it was a good time.
Yeah, so much fun.
We always have a good time with that.
Yeah.
But
then we've been together ever since then.
right, and then that was it, and like it was literally like a decision. Like we were just like, this is what we're gonna do, and this is like we're together. Like that's
that
it.
was
Like
it. Yeah, we were locked in at that point.
We were locked in. We were, and which is what led us to like
the engagement.
Our engagement. Our engagement consisted of
we were you were getting ready for work.
Yeah.
You were getting ready for work. I was still laying in bed because that was before I liked to wake up early.
Oh my god, I'll never forget that.
Your alarm would go off and I'd be like, "Oh, you kidding me?"
And I'm like this. I'm like,
you don't have to wake up.
But you're gonna wake up. You stay in bed. And I'm like, I don't need your reaction right now. I was like, and then now you're an early bird. But
I know.
But you know, I remember like that. Our engagement consisted of like, you want to get married? It was.
And I was like, yeah, like you want to? And you were like, yeah.
Why are we gonna wait? Like,
yeah,
it was
what
just,
are we waiting
like,
for?
What? Like, why do we need all this crazy stuff? I'm like, why don't we just get married?
Yeah. And I was like, when? You were like, November? And I was like, yeah, all right. That was like, literally it.
Literally it. It was just like no ring, like no big gesture, like no this. It was just like us making a decision of like, why do we need to waste any more time?
Yeah, we really want to be married. We really want to be together.
Yeah,
like, let's just do it.
You know, it's funny because like it's funny how it's making me feel right now because how we're always destined to be where we are right now, right? It's kind of like here we are. We had those moments and like those like and kind of like talking about it out loud. It never hit me until now that, you know, I think that's why we've accomplished so much.
Yeah.
In our time together, you know, I think it's just kind of like, because with each other, like why waste time? Like.
Right.
Like, we've already been through shit. Like, we've already wasted enough time.
Yeah.
Like, doing the wrong things, at the wrong jobs, with the wrong people, entertaining the wrong shit.
Yeah.
And it's just like, we both were just like, yeah, fuck it, let's just do it.
Yeah, let's make these decisions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's the engagement.
Yeah. So we can probably wrap that up, this episode there, right?
Yeah, I think that's probably it right there to that one.